Oh, hi, Stephanie. Valerie Milano here from the Hollywood Times and also Aspiring Magazine. And I'm so glad to meet you virtually. I know you were on the cover of Aspiring Magazine just recently, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm happy to have been there.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, you have had an extraordinary career spanning in television and film and theater. Yet, what we're talking about today, Love Letters, has a unique intimacy to it. What drew you to revisit this piece at this moment in your life, and why does it still resonate with you now?
Well, let me take the second half of your question first.
Sure.
Um, Love Letters is kind of a gift to actors, written by A.R. Gurney. A.R. Gurney, who is no longer with us, sadly, was brought up in the Northeast. And so all of the locations that are referred to in this play are very personal to him. It's around the areas that he grew up in. And on one summer holiday, he decided to write this play as a kind of amusement so that some of us who were coming to stay for the week or the weekend or for longer, or even in the communities that he was in, could have something to do, a kind of entertainment, a house entertainment for the holidays. It would be very easy to do. He wrote these characters and he wrote their letters that they had written to each other across a lifetime at a particular period of time that was personal to him and personal to all of us who are, shall I say, grown-ups, who actually
I like that.
remember history, who actually read history or lived through some history. And it pulls out a nostalgia in everyone who either reads it in front of people or reads it privately.
Yes, that's interesting.
It became so popular for his house guests, everybody wanted to do it. And he started doing it in a little theater. Then he started doing it off Broadway because he also lived in New York City. And it became a thing to do because you didn't, there were two actors sitting on stage reading the letters. And so you didn't require rehearsal time. It didn't require massive amounts of financing. And for years and years, with a variety, very well known, some not so well known. And then Robert Wagner and I, when Heart to Heart went off the air, there was a producer who presented us with the opportunity to do this play, which we did over a period of about 6 years. We would go out from time to time on tour. We opened this play in Canada. We opened it in the West End in London. We played theaters such as the Chicago Theater, which has 3,000 seats. After some time, we knew the play, so the performance was less with your head down reading than reading the play or speaking the letters to the audience and then looking at the letters below you while the other one was talking or performing. Because when you had venues that large, you had to make contact with the audience. So we did I say this? We did over 500 performances.
Wow, no, you
I
didn't say that.
know, over a period of about 6 years. And
Goodness.
it became something very personal to both of us and something we truly enjoyed because we not only got a chance to be on stage and perform, but we also had a chance to touch audiences all over, seemingly all over the world, Hawaii, Canada, and all over the United States. So it was a
Beautiful.
fabulous, fabulous experience.
So this,
Now,
yes, go ahead.
now we were looking for a fundraising event for the William Holden Wildlife Foundation because we haven't done one in Los Angeles for a long time. And our secretary treasurer came up with this wonderful idea. I had run into my old friend Patrick Wayne, with whom I worked when we were both teenagers uh, in a movie called McClintock that his father and Maureen O'Hara starred in. And it was very much a family affair. McClintock was directed by everyone who had ever, directed by Andy McLaughlin, who was Victor McLaughlin's son, produced by Michael Wayne, who was the eldest son of John Wayne. Patrick Wayne was in the film. Maureen O'Hara and John Wayne had done so many extraordinary films together, not the least of which is The Quiet Man. And I always say to anybody who ever goes to Ireland, if you don't and haven't seen The Quiet Man, don't admit to it or see it immediately because they'll kick you out of Ireland if you haven't seen that movie. It's an institutional movie. The Irish are very attached to that film. And everybody in that movie, the cameraman had done so many films with John Wayne because it was kind of an extension of the, not kind of, it was an extension of the John Ford movie family. You know, John Ford liked to work with the same people over and over again. So there were the same makeup artists, the same cameramen, the same lighting technicians, everybody, he liked to have that consistency and loyalty. And everybody was there. That was the only, even the Indians, the famous John Ford Indians that he had used in all of his Western movies in Kanab, Utah, even they were imported to Arizona to be in the movie. So I think I was the only non member of the John Ford family, but they
Uh,
quickly absorbed me.
yeah.
And I had the great joy and privilege of being part of that unusual and very privileged family.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for all that because I know this performance reunites you with Patrick Wayne for a one night only event at 1 o'clock on January 11th on the Debbie Reynolds Stage in North Hollywood at the El Portal. What does this reunion mean to you personally with Patrick, and how does that shared history inform the way you approach these characters? Does it?
Oh well, I think it does for us, but it does for the audience as well. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it resonates with everybody in the audience. You don't have to be of that generation to understand it, but because it's such a human story, and you're rooting for one or the other throughout the piece, and it's so perfectly written. As I said, A.R. Gurney gave us a gift that will last for eons because it's a touching personal review against a background of history that if you know that history it becomes even more poignant.
Just to reiterate, Love Letters relies entirely on voice, on rhythm, and emotional truth. I mean, there's no costumes, no sets, no movement. As an actor, as a wonderful actor as you are, what is most challenging and most liberating, maybe, about that kind of stripped down storytelling?
Well, I suppose you can liken it to radio.
True.
When years and years ago, the radio play was the great entertainment for the masses in the United States before television became accessible to everybody. I remember as a child listening to the Lone Ranger. And do you remember any of those serial radio shows? They
Of
were
course.
fabulous,
Yes, fabulous.
and some very, very well-known actors participated in that. Then there was the very famous radio play that Orson Welles did that frightened the entire nation. It was like the invasion from Mars, and it
Yes.
was so authentic, and it it's it was because it was radio and it wasn't television. It inspired the imagination of the listeners, and it created a panic as if there was an invasion from outer space. that was a radio play. So
Mhm.
I think these sort of performances allow the audience to fill in the gaps.
That's a wonderful analogy. That's really a good analogy. You know, I want to switch gears just for a minute. You were a trailblazer, as we know, early on from The Girl from Uncle, the first hour-long U.S. series that's led by a woman, and also To Heart, which helped redefine television partnerships. When you look back, did you realize you were helping change the landscape for women on screen?
No, and I wish we had, because it would have been a wonderful aspect to be able to discuss, promote in those days in the 1960s when that show came on the air. I was under contract to Columbia Pictures. I was part of the last of the great Hollywood studio system. It was the twilight of the studio system, and I was one of the last of the red hot contract players. I had been under contract to Columbia for a few years. I had made 17 movies while under contract to Columbia. They loaned me out to other studios. It was the old system. And I was away in England visiting the man who I would then marry, who was an actor working on a little movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
I was on the set with him, fascinated by Stanley Kubrick and what he was doing. And I was actually the first voice of Hal the computer, interestingly enough, just because Stanley wanted to hear a woman's voice. And
Interesting.
then I was immediately fired, and he wound up with the voice he wanted. But while I was in England, I got a phone call from my agent saying, well, the studio has sold you, me, meaning my contract and me, to MGM to do a television series called The Girl from Uncle. You got to come home. I had no, this is the old system. I had no choice. It wasn't a question of saying, do you want this? I was contractually obligated to Columbia for another few years, and they could do what they sort of wanted with me. So obviously they were paid. My contract was paid off by MGM, and I showed up. Kenny Hollywood, the famous man at the gate, let me in, and the fabulous studio, which was still somewhat intact, uh, became my home for the next year and a half.
Yeah, to kind of continue on that vein, you've worked alongside legends from John Wayne, Ava Gardner, Roger Moore, and Sammy Davis Jr. How did those early collaborations, or did they, shape your sense of craft and professionalism?
Oh, well, I mean, my God, we learn from everybody, you know. There's an old saying in tennis, you don't improve your game unless you're playing with people who play better than you.
Love it.
So
That,
that's a little bit about acting. You always look better when you're with somebody who's actually better than you.
yes. So I know you don't have a whole lot of time today, but I do want to know the proceeds from this performance that we're talking about at the El Portal Theater benefit the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, and it's a cause that deeply is connected to your life. How do you see the relationship between art and activism today? And why is it important for artists to use their platforms with these kinds of intentions?
Oh, well, that's a wonderful question.
Thank
I
you.
wish we had an entire entire podcast to discuss that, because it's really a very deep and important discussion, because we don't see so much activism coming from the newer generations, the younger generation of actors. They talk about being conservationists, but they don't actually participate as much as we do, or we did. Or I come from a generation where we did march in the street, you know, whether it was against the war or for a passionate or throwing away our brassieres. You know, we marched. We did something. We were activists. We were encouraged to participate.
Yeah.
and we felt that it was our obligation to participate. I'm a little disappointed that we've lost that inspiration. Somehow it's gone by the wayside. Maybe people think because they look at everything on their phones that somebody else is doing it, so I don't have to do it. But we do have to do it if we want to live on a planet that has a future.
Yes.
So part of the passion that I have for being the founder of this organization is to carry on some of the ideas that Bill had. Because in 1953, no, sorry, 1959, Bill created in Kenya the first, and I mean the first, wildlife a conservation effort for on a private piece of land as a game ranch for the preservation of species. Nobody had the word conservation in their vocabulary in those days, nor did they have the concept of extinction. So Bill was a visionary, and he never really discussed this in public because he never wanted to think that he was dining out on this passion in some way. Today we think about those things in a very different way, and because we are a 501c3 public charity, we need to publicize this. We need to let people know what we're doing. Our education center, which is designed partially on his ideas, but has grown into something that I don't think any of us could have imagined it would. We service between 11 and 14,000 students a year. They come to us for free by the grace of our lovely and generous contributions from our donors. And we have an outreach program in the bush. When I call it the bush, it's in rural areas with rather impoverished tribal people who don't get access to a lot of privilege for education. The mission statement of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation is wildlife conservation through education and alternatives. So our mission statement at the William Holden Wildlife Foundation is wildlife conservation through education and alternatives to habitat destruction, which has really been one of the greatest contributors to climate change, far in excess of petrol operated cars, in destroying and exploiting as much of the planet as we can and using it for either agriculture or the resources that it contains. We have denuded the very aspect of this planet that makes it rare in our solar system, the greenery that allows us to have oxygen, the greenery, the vegetation that absorbs carbon dioxide and gives off oxygen. We have we've overdone it. We've overexploited. We're excessive in our greed and excessive in our behavior. And only we can change that. We can't rely on our governments to change it because they're in business. We human beings have to change it by observing our own exploitation of what is available, our own behavior, and how it is that we acquire, why we are so acquisitive, and what it is we acquire. And just look at what you're wearing. Is it biodegradable when you throw it away? So we have a lot to take on as human beings. And there is no such thing as someone saying, oh, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? You can do a lot. And
Good.
that's what we want to encourage. So the money that we raise for the William Holden Wildlife Foundation goes 100% to the work that we do. Our overheads are covered by a single donor, so we don't have to take anything off of that for our overheads to run our operation, which I'm very proud of. And look at our website. You can see a little bit more about what we do and what it looks like at www.whwf.org. And I hope it's of interest to your listeners.
I love that. And we will write that in our article as well. I am so happy, Stephanie. I've had the joy of watching your career evolve and of sharing moments with you beyond the spotlight. And thank you so much for this time that you've given us, the Hollywood Times dot today, that you've given us today. And aspiringmagazine.com. And we can't wait till January 11th. We will be promoting it, and I know it's going to be spectacular. And thank you again for all your time today.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Happy Christmas.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.